Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia, where history, mystery, and the unexplained collide. From eerie encounters to cryptid lore, from channeled messages to scientific investigations, we're lifting the veil and stepping into the unknown. I'm Heather, your guide through the shadows, and together we'll unravel paranormal phenomena, strange synchronicities, and the mysteries that refuse to be ignored. Whether you're a skeptic or a seeker or somewhere in between, this space is for you. Fasten your seatbelt, expand your thinking, and cross the threshold beyond the veil. Every day, new UFO footage surfaces, grainy, shaky, sometimes downright ridiculous. But behind the videos are government leaks, whistleblower confessions, and reports that make you wonder, is anyone actually in control of the truth? Last episode, we peeled back the layers of ancient sightings, military encounters, and the shifting UFO narrative. But today, we step deeper into the most bizarre, compelling, and utterly questionable revelations ever captured. What's real? What's misinformation? And what's just a really bad job? I'm Heather, and in this episode of You've Got to Be Joking, Part 2, Truth, Cover-Ups, and Unsolved Mysteries of UFOs and UAPs, we're untangling the cover-ups, leaked documents, and strategic distractions shaping UFO conversation. Because when it all comes to UFOs, sometimes reality is stranger than a hoax. I saw something hovering, silent, unmoving, then suddenly gone. We've all heard the reports. Military footage, leaked documents, whistleblower testimonies. But while the world finally acknowledges unidentified aerial phenomena, one question remains. How much do we really know? For decades, governments have dismissed, rebranded, and classified UFO investigations. Reports surface, some declassified, and others redacted beyond recognition. And now, in the midst of this global awakening, I received a message, one that suggests the truth isn't just about us, it's about them. First, they called them flying saucers, then UFOs, and now UAPs. A name change so subtle, calculated. But does it mean anything? For decades, the term UFO carried weight, mystery, speculation, even ridicule. But in recent years, the shift to unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, has been deliberate. A rebranding. A move away from decades of conspiracy theories and toward something more official. But is it just cosmetic? Or is there a calculated effort to control the narrative? The shift from UFO to UAP wasn't just about terminology. It was about perception. By reframing the conversation, officials distanced themselves from decades of speculation while subtly acknowledging that something is out there. So, if we think about this for a moment, something that was said in the closing outro of our last episode was that the phenomena persists and it exists. So we know, and they know, government officials, whoever they are, they will acknowledge that this phenomena exists. But thinking about it, if they will acknowledge that it exists, why have they not said anything? Really leaves you to question what's really going on in the upper levels of government that they feel that they just can't disclose what's going on. For years, UFO, the terminology, carried baggage, conspiracy theories, pop culture exaggerations, and outright dismissal by mainstream science. But in 2017, the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, began using the term unidentified aerial phenomena instead. The shift was strategic, moving away from the stigma of UFOs while making the conversation more palatable for government agencies and scientific institutions. Then, in 2020, the US Department of Defense officially established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, further cementing this transition. By 2022, NASA followed suit, launching its own UAP study team, signalling the conversation had shifted from fringe speculation to legitimate scientific inquiry. So I'm tipping that my last comment on, we can acknowledge that it exists and why is there secrecy, seems a little bit interesting that just in recent years, we've started actually putting together sort of legitimate scientific groups or I suppose it was classed as an inquiry. So essentially it's like, yeah, we're doing an inquiry on this and here's a team to investigate it. And thinking about it a little bit more, there is a series that I have watched quite a bit of over the years. And at first I was a little bit apprehensive because and this might seem a little bit odd, being that the first episode and this one are about UAPs and UFOs, was for majority of my life, I have always been afraid of UFO or UAP phenomena. I've always just been like, nope, can't do it, can't do it. It's too much. It's a yuck. I just can't. It scares me. And it's really funny that I've now completely gone past that and I'm in a position where I'm so intrigued by it that there's no fear. Um, and it sort of came about in a documentary that I'd watched in probably about 2021, maybe early 2022, was some point around then. And I remember because my youngest son was still under 12 months old, so it would have fitted that sort of time frame. And we have obviously like 60 Minutes in Australia. It's obviously in other parts of the world as well. But one of our other major broadcasting channels here in Australia has a very similar program called 7 News Spotlight. And it's very similar to 60 Minutes in the sense that it sort of follows stories in the same kind of way. And this particular episode was about UAP phenomena, and I believe it could have actually been in the area of Pine Gap, which we touched a little bit on last episode. And interestingly, the way that this documentary was put together, I didn't feel fear when I watched it. I actually felt like this sense of fear leave me and just pure intrigue and just like, oh my God, wow, this is not something to necessarily be feared all the time, but wow, this is really interesting. And sort of since then, I've really started to watch more and more documentaries or docuseries about the UFO and the UAP phenomena. And it probably has been in that same time frame that we've really seen what would probably back up this like legitimate scientific inquiry about not just wanting to acknowledge that they exist, prove that they exist and try and understand what it is we're seeing in what capacity. And one particular documentary series that I've watched, which is quite well known, it's about a particular ranch in a state of Utah in the US. And I had watched that, and I understand that, with television series and things like that, there's obviously going to be a level where things are sort of amplified a little bit to hook the viewer in. I can't speculate on how they've produced it, but some of the evidence that's come out of that show is absolutely mind-blowing and really cool. And I've really enjoyed learning more about it through that sense. So, you know, it, it's interesting that in that same sort of time frame, we're seeing that it's not, if we go back, to Roswell sort of time frame where it was, oh, this person's crazy. They're lost the plot. They're not, whatever. They're not of sound mind, essentially. To sort of have grown so much in the sense of really trying to learn and understand it and prove scientifically more about it, it's it really does kind of support what we've just sort of mentioned about, the defense team in the US sort of going, okay, well, we want to set up an inquiry to sort of look at this and study it further. So it's really it's just really intriguing. I mean, it's still frustrating that we don't have all the answers yet, but we're getting much closer. And I think with anything to do with the paranormal or anything that's classed as supernatural, the more we can learn about it in the hopes that we can have some kind of explanation for it is kind of where that interest lies, I guess. I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that. It doesn't just have to be with UFOs or UAPs. It's sort of that whole paranormal. And if we think about, a term like paralegal or paramedic, it's para meaning that it's parallel and runs beside, and then the extra word after it is whatever that particular thing is. So, paranormal, it's running parallel to what is defined as normal in our world, I suppose, that we know. So yeah, it's pretty intriguing. It's really intriguing. So I'm kind of curious to see sort of how much further we can get with this one, because this one was quite fun to put together. So I hope you're all ready for more mind-blowing information after my rambling and a few little stumbles over words this episode, but not as many as the first one. So I think we're doing better. But recent Pentagon and NASA reports have examined objects that defy physics, crafts moving at impossible speeds, and performing maneuvers that are beyond our known technology. Yet, despite these findings, no definitive answers have actually been provided, as we were just talking about. The reports acknowledge the anomalies, but stop short of confirming extraterrestrial origins. In 2023, a Pentagon study led by Sean Kirkpatrick, head of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, and Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, examined UAP sightings that appeared to be highly maneuverable objects. In their findings, some of these objects exhibited flight characteristics beyond conventional physics. But the study stopped short of confirming extraterrestrial involvement. NASA's UAP study team, that was launched in 2022, reached a very similar conclusion. Their September 2023 report stated that while UAPs remained unexplained, there is no definitive evidence of extraterrestrial origins. Instead, they emphasised the need for better data collection and scientific analysis. So again, interesting. It's kind of coming back to what I've kind of recapped there as well, is that they're not denying the phenomena exists. They're just not able to prove what it is. And I think that's probably what I've really learnt about the paranormal, and particularly with UFOs and UAPs, is that the evidence of it existing is undeniable. It's just that we don't have enough to kind of say that's exactly what it is. And maybe, weirdly enough, maybe we're not meant to really know as much as we'd hope to know. It's yeah. Is there only a certain level that we as humans can kind of comprehend that maybe any extraterrestrial beings may kind of think, you know, humans just don't have that capacity to comprehend everything that we, um, our world, or everything that we are, or our technology. Maybe we just aren't advanced enough as a species to get to a level where we can comprehend that further. I don't know. That's just a thought that literally popped into my head as we were sort of getting started, really. It's interesting to kind of think about it from that perspective as well. So we'll keep that as a food for thought. Um, we're obviously going to look at declassified US military encounters, the unexplained phenomena. For decades, the US military has tracked unidentified aerial phenomena, radar confirmation anomalies, fighter pilot testimonies that were detailing crafts performing impossible maneuvers, and encounters that remain officially unexplained. Take the Tic Tac UFO incident of 2004, a case that shook military aviation. Navy pilots David Fravor and Alex Dietrich witnessed an object that moved with no visible propulsion. It descended to 80,000 feet in less than a second and actively jammed radar systems. Was this an act considered hostile? What did Fravor and Dietrich see? On November 14, 2004, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich were training with the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. Unknown to them, the USS Princeton's advanced radar had been detecting multiple anomalous aerial vehicles for 2 weeks. That's a long time. That's a really long fucking time. Objects appearing at 80,000 feet, descending in less than a second, and hovering at 20,000 feet before vanishing? That's insane. Fravor described the object as white, oblong, and smooth, moving in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics. When he attempted to intercept, the object mirrored his movements, then accelerated so fast it disappeared in an instant. The encounter was recorded on radar, analysed by intelligence officials, and later declassified, but no official explanation has ever been provided. Wow. I have seen this footage many times from what I've just described, but also where we're going next. And it's one thing when you've seen it so many times, but as I touched on in the first episode, I'd had a message come through to me whilst watching a particular clip of footage that is very much related to where we are in this current segment of this episode. And it's really interesting, the experience of watching it in a documentary or hearing it in a podcast or something like that. And, in those circumstances, you'll kind of get like a snippet of it before it cuts to something else, like cuts to somebody talking about something to do with the incident or what have you. But when you get to just see it, just purely, rawly, just straight up, that's what it is. You don't have the bells and whistles of it being involved in a documentary or a podcast or whatever, where there's constant cuts between this video. You just get to watch it from start to finish. And, that experience in itself is quite exciting and a little bit exhilarating and a little bit kind of eerie, because you've seen this before, but you're seeing it like as if you're seeing it for the first time. That's probably the easiest way I can describe it. So, that kind of exhilaration from being able to see something just sort of in its most purest form is just so, like, it just blows your mind. And so even just reading that, in the sense of I'm just reading it, I'm not hearing it being narrated by somebody in a documentary or hearing a professional that works within the field who's analysed it or worked somewhere within that kind of describing it in a different way. It's kind of like I'm just a regular person reading that and kind of being blown away at the same time. So I don't know what it's like for you guys, either watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, but it it's kind of, yeah, it's just another kind of level of like experience. And yeah, I'm just kind of blown away with that. So I won't keep rambling because I want to keep going with some of these other cool sightings that we're kind of touching on now. So we're up to the gimbal and go fast videos, officially declassified evidence. Then there are the gimbal and the go fast videos, officially declassified by the US Navy in 2020. These videos show objects accelerating at speeds beyond known aircraft capabilities and performing maneuvers that just seem to defy physics. In the gimbal video that was recorded in 2015, an object appears to rotate mid-flight, maintaining altitude without any visible propulsion system. The Go Fast video, captured in the same year, shows an object moving at extreme speeds over the ocean, with pilots struggling to track it. These encounters weren't just sightings, they were documented, recorded, and analysed. And yet, the official stance still remains vague. So, in terms of investigations and theories, why the lack of transparency? Despite these reports, resistance to full transparency still remains. But why? What aren't we being told? Some researchers believe these objects may be classified experimental aircraft, while others argue they could be extraterrestrial technology. The Pentagon has acknowledged the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena, but has not provided definitive answers. So it's interesting there with it coming through some researchers that may believe that the objects are currently classified experimental aircraft. And that kind of takes me back to something that we talked about in episode 1, which was around the it it was kind of I'm trying to think of how to explain it now, so I apologize for the delay, especially if you're listening to this on the podcast platform and you're like, just get on with it. Um, Thinking back to like Roswell time, and we did touch on that in the last episode, and there was something that kind of posed a question that I kind of put out there as well, which was, being the time that it was when Roswell happened, we'd just come out of World War II, and we were in a period where everyone's like heightened and a little bit like on edge. Like don't fuck with me, dude. We've just come out of a war. We can't, no. And there were growing tensions between two other strong countries at the time. And, there was probably an element of we've just come out of quite a major war. There was a lot of damage done. And now we've got some growing tensions. We can't be certain that what this wasn't enemy coming through and trying to infiltrate our country in some way, shape, or form, whatever that plan might be. It's that point of sort of being like, well, rather than alarming the nation with it, and we don't actually know if it's this country's military equipment trying to spy on us or whatever, we also don't want to put out there that it could be some kind of being from another place. Even though they did admit to that and then suddenly retracted and went, no, it's a weather balloon. It does kind of pose the question, as we just talked about, like, is it possible that some of these craft that are being seen are still, that there is maybe that reverse engineering going on where, earlier crash sites, there's been technology recovered that we're now in a position in our development as a species that we've got the capability to engineer that and test it. Potentially. So I guess it is, could it be that some of these things are experimental classified aircraft through military and government experiments? And I guess in some way, with part of the channeled message that I'd received a couple of days following the original one, that may kind of support where we're kind of looking at things at the moment. So we'll revisit this in a minute. We'll come back to this. But yeah, fascinating really that's, they're not denying that certain things aren't theirs. It's just that maybe there's a certain point where maybe it's half and half. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think on that. This is just me kind of putting my thoughts out there, and sometimes I don't necessarily think about these thoughts until I'm sort of putting my episodes together, or even when I'm in the moment, like right now where I'm recording, and I'll just have that thought kind of pop in and go, oh my God, wow, actually that's maybe something to think about. So if you've got any thoughts on what we've just sort of discussed so far, I would love to hear from you. Drop something in the comments, send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you think. And now we are getting to move into the channeled message, or part of it. The hidden narrative, a warning or a revelation? As I watched footage of military encounters, radar-confirmed anomalies, pilots describing craft performing impossible maneuvers, something happened. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't an assumption. It was a direct communication. Words that came through clearly, as though spoken into my mind. Deliberate, unwavering. These modern craft are drone. We use drones now instead, following early craft crashes and losses of our species. This prevents future losses and also prevents our species being recovered. Was this a communication from something beyond? A fragment of truth breaking through the noise? If this message is communicated accurately, then it suggests a strategic shift, one where direct biological encounters have been replaced with technology, ensuring that no beings are left behind and ensuring their species remains undiscovered and unrecoverable. Could this explain why UAP encounters today seem highly controlled, observed but never fully tangible, why these objects vanish instantaneously, resisting retrieval, evidence, and exposure. Or was it something else? A fragment of knowledge? Or simply a creation of my own subconscious, piecing together speculation into something that felt undeniable? So, we got to move into the channeled message a bit quicker than the last episode. What do you think? Was this communication a warning? A truth hidden in plain sight? Or was it something else entirely? Again, tell me your thoughts. Leave a comment. Send me a message. I'd love to hear what you think. So we're moving into some speculative theories now. So are UAPs actually drones? If UAPs are actually drones, rather than piloted aircraft, this changes everything. It shifts the discussion away from extraterrestrial beings toward technology-driven reconnaissance, a presence designed to observe but not interact. So this could really explain why modern encounters exhibit highly controlled movements, executing instantaneous accelerations, gravity-defying rotations, and really extreme maneuvers with no visible propulsion system. It might also account for the Tic Tac encounter where this object had jammed radar systems. Was it a calculated move that potentially suggests a level of self-preservation, secrecy, and potentially advanced defensive measures that, rather than traditional UFO UAP flight behavior? Historically, UFO sightings often included reports of biological entities. So again, that kind of takes us back to, particularly with Roswell, where there was speculation that remains of beings had been recovered. And through my channeled message as well, there was some kind of confirmation that bodies had been recovered in earlier crashes. Interesting to think about. Interesting to think about. But in recent years, the focus has shifted. More sightings involve fast moving, silent craft with no visible occupants. So, again, it kind of comes back to some of the more modern sightings that we're seeing. That just sounded really stupid. Sightings that we're seeing. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. um, but, a lot of the evidence has been captured around the world in sort of more modern captures is they do appear to sort of be more like orbs or lights. There doesn't seem to be so much on specific detail of a particular shaped craft. We've certainly seen those over the years, and they still do occur, but most of the evidence that we're seeing currently, they just appear to be like a bunch of lights that kind of move in synchronicity, or um, they'll create formations, like the Phoenix lights. And there's been lots of sightings very similar to that in multiple parts of the world at different points in time, where it might be one light that is there and suddenly you see it multiply, or it might break off into three or four, and then they kind of do a formation, and then they kind of go back and be one thing. So it's kind of interesting that you know we're just seeing kind of lights at this point. So to me, that kind of says it probably wouldn't have visible occupants, but that's not to say that they're not manned craft. They very well could be, but I think that statement in particular, where it's, they're definitely more fast moving and doing different little maneuvers that are just so much quicker and more agile, and they have the ability to be in the sky one minute and in the water the next. And you only need to look at places like Catalina, the Catalina Island off the western coast of the USA, is that that's like one of the biggest hotspots. In fact, I believe it's the main kind of hotspot for UFO and USO, being the submerged objects. They're very prominent around there, and there's still a lot of research going on about, is there a base in the ocean? Is that why we see these maybe drone-like things sort of popping up and taking off and being able to go from, air to water without, I don't know, beings dying within that? I mean, we wouldn't know, I suppose, unless there was a little body that came to the surface at some point. But yeah, just interesting food for thought there. So again, what if these are simply drones or a probe that ensures anonymity, preventing their exposure as a species, and eliminating any risk of losing any more of their own? And I guess there's been a lot of theories around, are they humans from the future? Had they evolved and not taken care of their planet, that they're now coming to our planet for resources? Or, there's been a lot of theories that kind of come up around that. So does that statement then kind of support, are they more likely to be using drones rather than manned aircraft? So interesting food for thought there. Government agencies and military intelligence continue to study these objects, yet they refrain from offering definitive answers. The Pentagon's UAP task force that was launched in 2020 has confirmed that these craft are not conventional aircraft, but still remains tight-lipped on their origin. So what do you think? Are we witnessing a technological evolution where the biological presence has been replaced by artificial intelligence? Or is there maybe another explanation just waiting beyond our understanding? Again, kind of what I touched on before. Are we not at a point where we've evolved enough to be able to comprehend the enormity of another species? We are now moving into famous cover-ups and media manipulation. And this one is a particularly interesting topic, as it's kind of everywhere, really. I think more and more we're seeing lots of different media exploring lots of different elements, and they all seem to have a limit on how far they go. So I feel like this topic's really going to be interesting to kind of cover off and see what else we might pose as a food for thought, or something that someone that's listening might actually have more knowledge on. So I'm curious, like, let's kind of delve into this a little bit more. So for decades, UFO reports have surfaced with eyewitness accounts, military encounters, and leaked documents. Yet mainstream narratives often dismiss them as a conspiracy, speculation, or, my personal favourite that's coming up, misidentifications. But if the reports persist, the secrecy remains. And so we have to ask, who benefits from silencing the truth? In this segment, the government's suppression of UFO knowledge, the tactics used to control public perception, and the forces shaping the narrative behind the scenes. Let's start with Project Blue Book. from 1952 up until 1969. Officially presented as an investigation into UFO sightings, but was it really a debunking operation? Project Blue Book was the US Air Force's longest-running UFO study, collecting over 12,618 reports. While its stated goal was to determine whether UFOs posed a threat to national security, many researchers believe its true purpose was to dismiss and discredit sightings rather than investigate them. The project was the successor to Project Sign from 1947 to 1949 and Project Grudge 1949 to 1952, both which had really already set a precedent for skepticism. While early reports suggested UFOs could be extraterrestrial or interplanetary, later derivatives pushed for explanations that aligned with conventional aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. By the time Project Blue Book had ended, the Air Force concluded that no UFOs represented a technological advancement beyond human capability, and that none posed a national security threat. But skeptics argue that the project was designed to control the narrative, ensuring that UFOs remained a fringe topic rather than a legitimate scientific inquiry. Majestic 12, a secret committee or a fabricated distraction? Then there's the Majestic 12 documents, alleged secret government files detailing a committee formed in 1947 to manage extraterrestrial encounters. Real, fabricated, or disinformation? The Majestic 12, or MJ12, conspiracy emerged in the 1980s when leaked documents claimed that President Truman had assembled a group of scientists and military officials to recover and study alien technology following the Roswell crash. These documents, allegedly sent to ufologist Jamie Shandera in 1984, described a highly classified operation tasked with reverse engineering alien technology and concealing extraterrestrial evidence. The papers included references to top military officials, including General Nathan Twining and Dr. Vannevar Bush, adding credibility to the claims. But in 1988, the FBI officially declared the documents completely bogus, stating that an Air Force investigation had determined them to be a hoax. Many ufologists believe MJ12 was an elaborate fabrication designed to mislead researchers and obscure a deeper truth. That's really interesting. I never really knew much about MJ12. I don't think it's something that, I haven't come across it realistically until I sort of was researching this topic. I really didn't know much about it. I'm sure it's in plenty of UFO podcasts or documentaries or docuseries, but I don't really ever recall really hearing that much about it. So I'm kind of curious to maybe look into this one a little bit more in another episode potentially, because it kind of seems a little bit more secretive than, Project Blue Book. I think that particularly with that one's sort of been fairly well known for quite some time. And so it's kind of cool coming across some of them that I haven't really heard of, and sort of seeing what sort of program it was, or what sort of results it has, or why it's been sort of kept a little bit quieter. But I mean, just from my experience, I haven't really come across MJ12. So, I mean, if anybody's listening or watching on YouTube and you know more about this, like, hit me up. I'd love to have a chat with you about it, because maybe that's something that can be explored in a co-host discussion episode, potentially, something more. Particularly with this topic, which most paranormal topics you could go on for hours, if not days, potentially weeks or months. I don't know. There's a lot involved in a lot of these topics. And I think, with these episodes that I'm covering at the moment, they're really kind of just scratching the surface and putting the questions out there, I guess, to sort of look into further and discover a bit further. Because I think there's a lot to be said about lots of different phenomena, that there's just so much and it's so in depth. And you know, yeah, it's just, we're kind of just barely scratching the surface with some of the stuff that we're talking about. And this is like the surface level stuff. So if you're liking the You've Got to Be Joking little three-parter at the moment, then yeah, it might be a topic that I have to explore a bit more in depth and maybe pick something specific out of each episode and really explore it a lot further. So yeah, I think this is sort of the way it's going at the moment, because I'm kind of feeling like I'm having my mind blown a little bit and kind of going, wow, there's still so much that's just so untouched and unexplored. So I think that's an idea for somewhere down the track. um, but kind of moving forward, we're also looking at another operation called Operation Mockingbird. So this was, a topic of controlling this UFO narrative. So, is this a covert program where intelligence agencies have influenced the media narratives? And have they shaped the public perception of UFOs from a scientific curiosity to maybe just an outright ridicule? I'm looking forward to kind of diving into this one a little bit too. So, initiated in the 1950s, Operation Mockingbird embedded CIA operatives within major news organisations, ensuring that UFO reports were dismissed, distorted, or framed as science fiction. Journalists were recruited, funded, and strategically placed within newspapers, magazines, and broadcasting networks to control the flow of information. The goal? To steer public perception, ensuring that UFOs remained a fringe topic rather than a scientific inquiry that was serious. By the 1970s, whistleblowers and investigative journalists began exposing the operation. The Church Committee hearings, 1975, revealed that the CIA had actively manipulated media coverage, leading to the public outrage. In 1977, journalist Carl Bernstein published an expose detailing on hundreds of American journalists and how it had worked closely with the CIA, confirming long-held suspicions. Even today, some believe that the media manipulation continues, shaping how UFOs are discussed in mainstream outlets. Are we still being steered away from the truth? So I guess to kind of close off this area and move into the next fun-filled part of this, I guess the question is, we kind of covered it a little bit earlier in this episode, where it's obvious that something exists and it's obvious that there's a level of truth that is still being withheld. So kind of coming back to the channeled message I'd had earlier, we've got another part to that, and I'm about to share it with you. So this one's, this episode's a little bit more fun, because I think more of this channeled message gets to be integrated into this particular part of, or part two of this little part 3 episode series, because it really, this sort of second message was the one that I had experienced while doing my automatic writing. And it was in like an A4 book and it took up the entire page. So it's kind of fun to be able to like work really key points of that channel message into this particular episode because it really does fit with the topics that we're kind of covering in this episode. So, the channeled message. Why they send messages through us. A warning, a directive. While researching, I felt a presence return. Familiar yet distant. The same being from my previous session. As I opened myself to receive, the message came through, direct, intentional, urgent. Hello, it's me, the being you spoke with before. You may share my message in your podcast. That is why I came to you while you were researching. It is important for your people to know the truth. Although we are prevented from telling humanity directly, we can send subliminal messages through people like you, the connected ones, those who listen, those who perceive beyond the norm. We mean humanity no harm, but our presence is not without reason. We are here to ensure you keep your planet healthy. For what happens here does not only affect Earth. A failure to maintain balance would bring catastrophic consequences, rippling beyond your world, beyond your solar system. It would destabilize thousands of interstellar beings, spreading chaos through surrounding galaxies and planetary networks. A message not of control nor dominance, but of interwoven consequences. Earth is not isolated. Its fate matters beyond its skies. So that was a bigger chunk of the message that sort of come through. So again, what do we think? Was this a warning, a plea, or simply an insight into something far greater than we understand? What do you make of this message? And I can tell you now, while I'm recording this, after being able to read that message to you, as soon as I finished that last sentence of the actual message, I felt almost a little bit lightheaded and a bit dizzy. And it's quite interesting because I know when I channeled this message, I felt quite like I felt kind of mind blown that that had come through, but it was almost like I don't know if I should tell people that I've received this message because number one, they probably think I'm a fucking nut job that probably belongs in a straitjacket. And, you know, I think for me, I tend to almost discredit my ability sometimes because it's still hard for me to kind of accept that I'm able to connect and channel with energies. So even though it's like I know that that's the message that's coming through, it's that part of there's still this part of me that still wants to try and debunk it. So, you know, even with kind of going, I don't know if I'm meant to be sharing this with people or if it was a message just for me, and to have that confirmation come back through to sort of say, you have my permission to do this. We need you to do this. Um, it's kind of it's a bit kind of scary because I think sometimes you kind of you've been able to personally experience that yourself, and when you experience that, you're kind of like, wow, that was really kind of cool, or there's just an experience there. And so to be able to share this, particularly on a topic that is very, I don't know if controversial is the right word. It could be, but a topic that we are still really trying to navigate where we're at with disclosure and beyond, that there's part of me that was really a bit apprehensive to kind of share it, because there's a little bit of fear there, like, am I supposed to be sharing this? I don't know if I am, but to get that confirmation of, like, you have my permission to share it. Like, we, yeah, it's quite an experience. And I have to say, I mean, I don't know, for people that are watching on YouTube, you may be able to see a little bit more, but I mean, I don't know if I look a little bit more sort of out of sorts in this most recent couple of minutes after sharing that message, because I certainly feel it. And yeah, it's a really strange feeling. It's almost like I'm excited to have shared it with everybody, but I'm also a little bit nervous, because it's like, I don't know. I don't know how are people going to take that? Is that, what are the repercussions of that? But it came to me. I was given permission to share it. Um, it's just, yeah, it's a funny feeling. So, yeah, oh, wow. So again, I'd really be interested to hear what you guys think about that message and how it's kind of touching on a lot of the things that today's episode is covering. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So now that we've got that bit out of the way, we're going to move into our final segment, which is um, about disclosure. So what's next? Disclosure or distraction? For decades, UFO secrecy has been the norm. Classified reports, restricted access, and government denials. But suddenly, the narrative is shifting. Whistleblowers are stepping forward. Congressional hearings are happening. And the government is acknowledging UFOs, now called UAPs, like never before. But why now? Is this full disclosure, or is this a strategic distraction? Are we finally being told the truth, or are we being steered toward a controlled narrative? Modern whistleblowers and what they claim. Let's start with David Grush, the whistleblower who took the UFO community with his testimony before Congress in 2023. Grush, a former US intelligence officer, claimed that the government has been recovering and reverse engineering non-human spacecraft for decades. His testimony before the House Oversight Committee was explosive. He alleged the US government, in collaboration with private aerospace companies, has been running highly secretive special access programs dedicated to studying recovered extraterrestrial technology. But the most shocking claim? Grush stated that non-human biology has been retrieved from a crashed craft. He further alleged that individuals had been threatened or even killed to keep these programs hidden. Grush's claims didn't stop there. He also stated that he had seen documents suggesting that a spacecraft of alien origin had been recovered by Benito Mussolini's government in 1933, later procured in the US in 1944 or 45, with assistance from the Vatican and the Five Eyes Alliance. But here's the catch. Grush himself admitted that he hasn't personally seen a UAP. His claims are based on interviews with insiders and not direct evidence. The Pentagon and NASA have denied his allegations, stating that no such programs exist and that extraterrestrial life has yet to be discovered. So, is Grush revealing the truth, or is he part of a larger misinformation campaign? Luis Elizondo and military UAP programs. Now we're moving on to Lou Elizondo, the former Pentagon UAP program director who has spent years pushing for disclosure. Elizondo led the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, a secretive initiative studying UAP encounters. Elizondo has confirmed that US military actively investigates UAPs, but he refuses to reveal full details. He has hinted at advanced technologies and that they have not been made by any known government and are monitoring sensitive military installations. In a CNN interview, Elizondo was pressed about recovered biological samples and advanced aerospace technologies, but he stopped short of confirming extraterrestrial origin. He has repeatedly stated that UAPs are real and the US government possesses UAP technologies. But he also believes that some of America's adversaries may have access to similar materials, suggesting a multi-decade secretive arms race. Is he protecting classified information, or is he carefully controlling the narrative? Really interesting insight there to Lou Elizondo. I have watched a lot of documentaries with him in them, and having been since he's obviously made his departure from working through the ATIP program. And I have found a lot of his research, his information that he's been able to share with us really fascinating. So I think now, probably when Elizondo was in his current role, he obviously had to keep certain things under wraps, right? He was working for a government agency, and if they've said, you've got to stay tight-lipped, mate, he would have to. But now that he's no longer working in a governmental program, I have started to notice that there's more information coming out. Obviously, he's got to be very mindful of what he's sharing, but it is interesting where he's trying to now advise where there is a narrative and there is things happening and there is something coming. But again, there's only so much that he can say at this point. So interesting kind of information on Lou Elizondo there. So government's sudden acknowledgement of UFOs. And now there's government's sudden acknowledgement of UFOs. After decades of denial, officials are now openly discussing UAPs. Congress has passed UFO disclosure bills directing agencies to release official records, but with a 25-year delay on classified material. Meanwhile, the House Oversight Task Force is pushing for full UAP disclosure, challenging government secrecy. Some officials claim that even those with top secret clearance are denied access to UAP intelligence, raising questions about who truly controls UFO knowledge. Is this soft disclosure? Is it preparing the public for a bigger revelation? Or is it a strategic distraction designed to shift your focus away from the deeper truth? What do you believe? Have whistleblowers revealed real disclosure, or is this just another layer of secrecy? So, I leave you with the ultimate question. Are we really alone? Or Have we ignored the truth for too long? Are we watching disclosure unfold? Or are we watching a well-crafted distraction play out? Does secrecy protect humanity? Or does it protect those in control? What do you believe? What if full disclosure isn't about revealing them, but about revealing us? That's it for part 2 of You've Got to Be Joking: Truths, Cover-Ups, and Unsolved Mysteries of UFOs and UAPs. We've unpacked government secrecy, military interference, and media manipulation. But there's one question we've yet to answer. Why do they care? If UFOs are real, if they are watching, why do they interfere? Why send warnings? Why step in when there are bigger things at play? In episode 3, we move beyond the cover-ups and leaks to explore the warnings, evolution, and interstellar connection behind UFO phenomena. Have they been guiding humanity all along? Or are we a part of something far more intertwined than we ever imagined?